So what is the main problem we have in the world? Well, today you might say that it's the COVID-19 pandemic. Or you might even say that racial tension is the biggest issue that we need to face. A case can even be made concerning global economic inequity, which is the issue with hopeless poverty over most of our planet. Perhaps if this problem were dealt with, everything would get better. Now, these and many other problems are real problems. I would say that these problems are serious and near to the heart of God. However, according to what God is telling us right out of the gates in the Bible, these are only symptoms of what the real problem is. Adam and Eve sinned by not trusting and obeying God. This put everything out of sync with how creation was intended. Fixing racial tension or disease or poverty would be good and God-honoring. But the foundational problem would not be fixed if these alone were dealt with. Remember, I was saying that Genesis 1 through 11 acts like a prologue to the story of the Bible. And now that the stage is set with sin being the main, you could say even the only problem that needs fixing in all of creation, God begins to unveil his plan for fixing it. And it starts with a man named Abram. Or you might be more familiar with the name God gave him, Abraham. Now, Abraham was 75 when he leaves his land, Ur. That's modern-day southeastern Iraq. And this is where God meets Abraham and reveals his plan for the sin problem. Now let's read it. It's found in Genesis 12, verses 2 and 3. And God tells Abraham, "I will make you a great nation. I will bless you and make your name great so that you will be a blessing. I will bless those who bless you, and him who dishonors you I will curse. And in you all the families of the earth will be blessed." A great nation. I will make you a great nation. At its very basic level, a nation needs a couple obvious things. It needs people and land. Now, at the time of this promise, Abraham is 75 years old and has yet to have one child. So God is sending this childless old man to a land that he has no ownership of and promises to make him into a great nation. Now, can you feel the strangeness of this? But Abraham believes God, and he gets on with the plan. Not much happens in Abraham's lifetime. He travels around, he meets people, he digs wells, and so on. There are a couple interesting moments in his life, but nothing that really contributes to the baby and land problems. In fact, Abraham waits another 25 years before the promised son, Isaac, is born. As we look at Isaac and then the grandson of Abraham, Jacob, we don't see a whole lot different, at least in terms of accomplishing the task of building a great nation. They all move around a bit. They all have trouble having children. Well, Jacob does better, but his children are problematic in terms of God's promise. None of them acquire any land, and they all eventually die. Not only do they not have numbers or territory, but a famine hits the region, which forces the children of Abraham to move to Egypt, which is not the promised land, where they will be put into slavery for hundreds of years. Now, why slaves in Egypt? One thing we read is that the children of Abraham have a habit of having a lot of babies now. So much so that it concerns the Egyptians. So now we have people. But people not in the promised land does not make a nation. Yet. Do you remember what I said about God always making progress? If we look from God's perspective, what can we see here? If the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, did not physically accomplish much of anything concerning the promise to become a great nation, why are they so highly regarded? We hear their names all through the Bible. Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The God of our fathers. Why are they considered the foundation of the history of God's people? Now, I'll give you the answer. They believed God. They trusted God. They had faith. In the mind of God, this is more important than personal achievement. But is this how you view your life? See, faith is the point. Patience is the setting. One of the main principles we find in the Bible is that God is not in a hurry. You might be in a hurry, but God is not in a hurry. Abraham was 75 years old when he began God's call. He dies without seeing many results. Isaac never really sees anything, but somehow he passes on the promises of God to his children. At least one gets it, Jacob. Jacob is restless, manages a chaotic household, experiencing, even causing, layers of dysfunction. Yet he stubbornly expects that God's promises will come true. And then he dies in Egypt. The following generations stay in Egypt for centuries. So where are you in God's story? If God takes his time and faith is the point of our existence, how will you relate to God? How will you press on with his plans? Can you wait until your 70s to get started with God's plan for your life? How will you live in the meantime? Disgruntled? Faithful? What will you expect from God? What will you not expect from God? Do you expect God to keep his promises even when things look bleak? Does the certainty of his promises fill you with hope to live today? Well, if we're in God's story today, and we are, how we respond to these aspects of God's story is vital for faithful living. And it makes it easier if we choose to wrestle with these questions together. Let's do this with one another. Let's do this for one another.